Numbers were my first language, while other kids doodled in the margins of their notebooks. I filled mine with neat columns of imaginary expenses, balancing totals like it was a game. Numbers were steady, precise, and fair. They never lied to me. People, though? People were unpredictable. They said one thing and meant another. They made promises and broke them without a second thought. For years, I convinced myself that safety came from control, from order, from making sure every bill was paid on time, every risk calculated. And then I met Ethan. It was at a networking mixer I hadn't even wanted to attend. I stood near the coffee station, clutching my cup like a lifeline, ready to slip out quietly after the first polite conversation. Then a voice cut through the hum of chatter. "Maria, right? You're the accountant with the sharp questions." I turned, startled, and there he was, tall, confident, eyes that seemed to read me like a ledger he actually wanted to understand. His smile was easy, disarming. For the first time in a long time, I didn't want to run from small talk. I wanted to stay. We ended up in a corner, talking long after most people had left. About everything, our work, our childhoods, the way Dallas never slept. He told me about his dreams of owning his own company someday. How he was tired of being a cog in someone else's machine. There was a fire in him, the kind of ambition that made my cautious heart beat faster. One date turned into 3, then into weekends spent exploring new restaurants, late-night drives with the windows down, music low, and his hand warm in mine. With Ethan, life felt bigger, louder, more alive. He made me laugh at myself, pushed me to loosen my grip on control, to believe that maybe not everything had to be planned down to the last detail. My friend said I glowed. My mother raised an eyebrow the first time she met him but smiled when she saw the way he looked at me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't living on the sidelines of my own life. The proposal wasn't a grand spectacle. No fireworks, no choreographed moment for social media. It was a Tuesday night, the smell of takeout filling our tiny kitchen. Ethan set his fork down, his hand trembling just slightly as he slid a small box across the table. "Maria," he said, voice raw and steady at the same time, "will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I opened the box. The ring wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I whispered, and then louder, "Yes." He laughed in relief, pulling me into his arms as the takeout grew cold between us. That night, as I lay in bed with the ring still snug on my finger, I let myself believe in something new. I'd always trusted numbers more than people, but Ethan made me believe in promises. For the first time, I thought I'd found someone I could count on. The first year of marriage was simple. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Saturday mornings meant coffee and crossword puzzles at the kitchen table. Sunday evenings, Ethan grilled while I prepared the week's spreadsheets for my clients. We laughed, argued over what to watch, made up before bed. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. That's why the change caught me off guard. Ethan grew restless. His easy smile became rare, replaced by long silences and distracted stares. I assumed it was work stress. We were both young, still climbing, still proving ourselves. But then came the night he sat me down. "Maria," he began, and I knew by the way he wouldn't meet my eyes that this wasn't tea about dinner plans. "What is it?" I asked softly. He took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something. I've been carrying it for a while and I can't anymore." My stomach tightened. "Okay. Tell me." "I'm in debt," he said, voice breaking just slightly. "A lot of debt." The word hung in the air like smoke. Debt. It didn't make sense. We lived modestly. Our bills were paid. My mind scrambled to calculate. A few thousand, maybe? Something we could chip away at? How much? My voice was quieter than I intended. His eyes flicked to mine, then away. 450,000. The number slammed into me, knocking the air out of my lungs. I felt the blood rush from my face. 400. And Ethan, how? He leaned forward, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Failed investments, personal loans, a business partnership gone sour. Payments that snowballed until he could no longer keep up. "I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know." I failed. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to breathe. 450,000. It wasn't just debt, it was a life sentence. My mother's voice rose in my mind, sharp and insistent. "Always protect yourself, Maria. Numbers are honest, people aren't." She had lived through her own betrayals, had drilled into me the importance of never letting anyone jeopardize my security. And yet, as I looked at Ethan's shoulders slumped, eyes rimmed red, I saw not a liar, but a man terrified of losing everything. A man who had once held me like I was his safe place. He reached for my hand. "If I lose this, I lose everything. I lose us. Please, Maria. I just need one chance to make it right." My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to scream, to walk away, to listen to the cold logic of numbers. But love isn't logical. It doesn't balance like a spreadsheet. "I'll help," I whispered. The words left my mouth before I could take them back. Ethan's relief was immediate. his grip tightening around my hand as if I'd just saved him from drowning. But as I stared at him across the table, my heart ached with a truth I couldn't ignore. Saving him might be the very thing that would destroy me. I told myself it was temporary, that if I just helped him dig out of the hole, Ethan and I could start fresh. Love, after all, was about partnership, about carrying each other through storms. But as I sat at my desk late into the night, the glow of my laptop bathing the room in cold blue light, I felt less like a wife and more like a lifeline. First, I drained my personal savings account, years of quiet discipline, skipping vacations, saying no to impulse buys, tucking away bonuses vanished with a single wire transfer. Watching the numbers plummet on the screen was like watching a piece of myself dissolve. Next came the emergency fund. My mother had insisted I build for the future, she used to say, for security when life turns cruel. It took me 3 seconds to click confirm transfer and erase a decade of her lessons. I couldn't stop shaking as I signed the paperwork at the bank. I told the teller it was for a property investment, forcing a smile while my stomach churned. At home, I hid the notarized receipts and agreements in a locked folder, every cent recorded. Not because I didn't trust my husband, but because the accountant in me couldn't ignore the possibility of risk. Ethan, meanwhile, seemed lighter as the debt payments cleared. His shoulders straightened, his laugh returned in flashes. One night, after I handed him a folder of finalized paperwork, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "You're saving my life." I wanted to believe it, but behind closed doors, I was unraveling. My nights were haunted by spreadsheets and what-ifs. What if my clients left? What if I couldn't rebuild? What if Ethan fell into another pit and dragged me with him? I tried to talk to him once, gently. "Ethan, we need to set boundaries. No more risks, no more loans." He stiffened. "You think I don't know that? You think I wanted this?" His tone was sharp, defensive, and for the first time I saw a flash of something dark in his eyes. I backed down, murmuring, "Of course not," but the unease lingered. Still, I pressed on. I took extra clients. I cut corners in my own life, fewer coffees, fewer dinners out, fewer calls to friends, because I couldn't bear to explain why I always said no. My world shrank into a cycle of work, save, pay. Each time I filed another receipt into the folder, I told myself it was worth it. That one day we'd look back on this season as proof of our strength. That Ethan would never forget the sacrifice I made. But as the balance sheets grew cleaner, I noticed something else shifting, the gratitude. In Ethan's voice dimmed, the thank yous faded. In their place came silence and then distance, like once the storm had passed. I was no longer his shelter but a shadow. I told myself it was stress, adjustment, anything but the truth. Because the truth was too unbearable to face. I had given everything, and somehow, I felt myself slipping away.
By the time Ethan's last debt was cleared, I expected relief, freedom, a chance to breathe again. Instead, the silence grew heavier. He no longer asked how my day went. His hand, once so quick to reach for mine, stayed buried in his pocket. He worked late, or so he said. When he was home, he sat in front of the television, scrolling endlessly, his eyes blank. At first, I told myself it was the weight of shame, that maybe he struggled to accept how much I had done for him. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. And then, one evening, everything cracked. I came home, grocery bags digging into my arms, only to stop cold at the sight in our living room. Ethan sat on the couch, his posture rigid. On either side of him were his parents. His mother's lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. His father leaned back with his arms crossed, like a judge awaiting a verdict. "Maria," Ethan said flatly, not even rising to greet me, "we need to talk." The air turned thick. I set the bags down, forcing my voice to stay steady. "What's going on?" He didn't flinch. "It's time for you to pack your things. You need to leave." The words didn't register at first. "Leave, Ethan? What are you saying?" His mother spoke before he could answer, her voice smooth with rehearsed cruelty. "Ethan has moved on, dear. It's better for everyone if you step aside gracefully." Her father added with a dismissive wave, "You should have known this was coming. Ethan deserves someone who won't weigh him down." My pulse thundered in my ears. Weigh him down. I had just carried 450,000 pounds of his mistakes. After everything I did for you. My voice cracked, more from disbelief than pain. Ethan looked at me then, his expression cold, unrecognizably. "You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. There's someone else. This marriage is over." The room swayed. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. My mother's warnings screamed in my head. People will take until there's nothing left of you. And yet, even as the walls closed in, something inside me snapped into clarity. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, a sharp, startling laugh broke from my throat. The sound startled even me, echoing through the room like glass shattering. Ethan's brows furrowed. "What's so funny?" I straightened, my spine suddenly steel. My heart still pounded, but the fear was gone, replaced with something else entirely. They thought they had cornered me, stripped me bare. But they had forgotten one thing. I hadn't just paid his debt. I had documented every single step. I met Ethan's eyes and said quietly, almost amused, "You forgot something." The smirk slid off his mother's face. His father leaned forward. Ethan froze. For the first time since this nightmare began, the power in the room shifted away from them and back into my hands.
Ethan's voice cut through the silence, sharp with irritation. "What's funny, Maria?" I set my bag down on the floor and walked slowly to the table. My heart was still hammering. But my hands were steady, years of discipline, of recording every detail. "We're about to pay off. You think you're done with me," I said quietly, "but you forgot something." From my purse, I pulled out a thick folder, worn at the edges from months of handling. I laid it on the coffee table between us and slid it toward him. His brow furrowed. "What is this? Proof," I said simply. His mother scoffed. "More dramatics." "Ethan, don't let her look at it," I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. Ethan flipped the folder open. His face drained of color as his eyes moved across the first page. Notarized documents. Bank statements, wire confirmations, every dollar I had transferred, every debt I had paid. Every signature of acknowledgement he had given me, page after page. Undeniable evidence. I leaned forward. "You didn't think I'd hand over nearly $500,000 without protection, did you? Every cent of your debt, Ethan, is tied to your name and mine as the one who paid it. And in case you're wondering, yes, the courts will love this." His father shifted uneasily. "Maria, let's not make this ugly." "Surely we can ugly," I snapped, turning to him. "You sat here tonight and tried to erase me, to push me out after I saved your son's life. Tell me, Mr. Daniels, what's uglier than that?" His mother's face had gone pale, the smugness gone. You wouldn't actually take this to court." I smiled then, cold and steady. "Try me. Fraud, conspiracy, financial exploitation. You think I won't? I have nothing left to lose." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're bluffing." I met his eyes, unflinching. "Then call it. Let's see how fast a judge takes everything you thought you owned. The house, the accounts, your reputation, it all collapses the moment I file." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Ethan's hands trembled as he flipped through more pages, each one hammering the truth deeper. He wasn't the man in control anymore, he was cornered. Finally, I pulled out one last document, a transfer form, already drafted. "You want me gone, fine. But not without this house in my name. Sign it and I'll walk away quietly. Refuse and I'll drag your name through every courtroom in Texas." His mother whispered. "Ethan, sign it." His father muttered a curse. The pen scratched across the page, each stroke trembling. When he slid the form back to me, his eyes were full of fury, but beneath it, fear. I tucked the document neatly into the folder and stood. "Thank you," I said softly, with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift from my chest. They thought they had destroyed me, but instead, I had taken everything that mattered. The power was mine now. The night I left the Daniels house, I didn't feel broken. I didn't even feel angry. I felt light. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking out empty-handed. I wasn't the desperate wife begging for scraps of affection. I was the woman holding the deed to the very house they had tried to bury me in. The morning after, the silence was different. Not suffocating, peaceful. Sunlight streamed across the hardwood floors, warm and golden, as if the house itself was relieved to be rid of them. I brewed coffee in the kitchen, the steam curling upward like a prayer, and sat at the table with my mother's favorite mug. The grief of losing her still ached in my chest, but it pulsed alongside something new, strength. Days passed, and the Daniels world began to crumble. Neighbors whispered, friends avoided their calls, without my money propping them up. Their charm evaporated, Linda's smile no longer fooled anyone. Ron's endless stories fell on deaf ears. And Ethan, my husband, was unraveling fastest of all. The woman he left me for? Gone. She'd realized soon enough that Ethan's swagger came with empty pockets and bitter baggage. He tried couch surfing, tried clawing back his old confidence, but word had spread. Everyone knew he had been bailed out, then tossed aside. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my door. I opened it just enough to see him unshaven, eyes hollow, clutching a bouquet of wilted flowers. Maria, he whispered, his voice rough. I made a mistake. I see that now. Please, can we start over? For a moment, I just looked at him. The man who had once made me laugh so hard my ribs ached. The man who had stood at an altar and promised me forever. The man who had conspired with his parents to strip me bare. I opened the door wider, long enough for him to see the papers neatly stacked on the counter. Proof of ownership. Proof of my freedom. Proof that he had lost. You're not here because you love me, I said quietly. You're here because your plan fell apart. I'm not your safety net anymore, Ethan. I never was. His eyes glistened with something that might have been regret. But it was too late. I closed the door slowly, the click of the lock ringing like music in my ears. That night, I walked through each room of the house, touching the walls, the door frames, the windows. This place had once been a cage, now it was a sanctuary, my sanctuary. I sat in the living room, with a cup of tea and my favorite book, the one my mom used to tease me about, another mystery novel, pages worn and loved. The house was quiet, but not empty. I could almost hear her voice, steady, wise, unshakable. I made it, Mom, I whispered into the stillness. I'm okay now, because in the end, I hadn't just won a house, I'd won myself back, my strength, my freedom, and that was worth more than $500,000.